Estate and CX, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business, host Mark Burgess and Rob Brady.
Welcome to this episode of Estate and CX. Today I'm talking to Paul from M&P Estates. He's going to talk to us about how you can make a business that embraces both technology and people so that you end up with clients that literally see you like family.
So Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us. I think you've got to rush off afterwards as well, straight away to evaluation.
Yeah, I've got
Keeping it real.
I've got a valuation and keeping hands on in our business. So yeah.
So podcast guest by day, valuation by night. Yeah.
Valuation definitely by night, hopefully.
So Mark and I really wanted to get you on the show because you've been with us as client-wise for a good couple of years now. I think.
Yeah, since about 2016, I think.
2016,
yeah.
So about 6-7 years now.
Yeah.
7-8 years now, actually.
Yeah.
And we've had coaching sessions. Yeah. You've been involved with, obviously, my time with Mark and the evolution of Iceberg.
Yeah.
And I've always found conversation, especially around coaching and how you've adapted your business over all the years you've been trading, especially using technology, especially using new marketing techniques, etc. It's been quite a fascinating journey that you've gone through. So for listeners out there or watchers out there, like, give us a bit of background on Paul and M&P Estates.
Right, M&P Estates came into fruition 25 years ago.
Yeah.
The reason I came into estate agency, prior to that I worked in banking, and my job was to buy properties, build portfolios. And I saw how sort of poor the service in the industry was at the time. Mm. And I thought I could make a massive impact for both sellers, buyers, tenants and landlords, really. So that's how I got into it. And we've been a family-run business. My wife worked in our business. I've had one elder daughter that's now left, and she's gone and done her own thing in a estate agency. And I've now got my younger daughter working in our business. My son does all of our social media stuff. Yeah. So it is really a family-run business.
Properly, yeah.
Proper family-run business at every sort of level.
So when you came out of banking, and obviously all your experience probably before setting up an estate agency, what did you learn in those early stages of your career that when you actually went into estate agency that you thought, actually, this is my learnings?
I think the thing is that what I found is that obviously in property we always talk about location, and I think it really, for me, it was about the communication. So it's communication. When I worked on the other side, building property portfolios, it was to listen what your client wanted, work out exactly what their wants, their needs, their sort of desires were. And I think that was one of the things that I found lacking, because I was buying properties through estate agents and renting properties out to via letting agents. It's just, even though I was giving them quite a bit of business, they just didn't seem to grasp, obviously, the needs and wants of either myself as the broker in between or of the client. So
it's quite interesting, because I remember even when I was in agency, you've experienced it now, and probably listeners out there. I used to have clients who were building their portfolios even for that, and I used to go out and go, right, have you got these particular properties? And even that was a bit of a weird conflict, because it was like, I'm here to try and give you properties, or buy properties from you for our clients, and it's quite an easy win-win situation, because you haven't got to worry about like getting them to buy it, because that's already in place. So what was that experience like, actually being that buying agent? Because that's quite, obviously, it's been seen as almost like a newer thing these days, but obviously, I know it's obviously been around before in the past, but what did you learn from, I don't know, as a buying agent and dealing with a portfolio before you even got into actually managing your own proper portfolio?
I think what I really found with it is that agents would see it as an easy touch. They would want to sell you stuff that they couldn't move. I can remember dealing with one agent, which I won't mention, and it was like they had a block of flats, and we had a client who wanted to buy a block of flats. But when we looked at it further, before it got to the legal stage, all the leases were defective.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we went back to the agent. Well, why are you trying to sell us stuff that you know you've got a problem with?
Yeah.
And their answer, well, someone's got to buy them.
Yeah.
But obviously not my client. So I would, even now when I'm dealing with, like, we still deal with agent or brokers like who are trying to find properties for their clients. So again, it's just, they're a customer. So whether you're buying one property, you're looking to buy a portfolio, it is really important to sort of get to the bottom of why you're doing it, what you're really looking for, what your client's looking for, and what sort of return are they looking for? Because I think in portfolios you'll have a mixture of, I would say you'll have houses, you'll have flats, and are you looking for rental income or are you looking for capital growth? It's completely different. If you've got a client who just wants capital growth and they're not interested in the rental income, then you would sell properties in a certain area. If you've got people that just want the return or the rental income, you'd probably sell them properties in the cheaper part of town where they'll be able to achieve that, really. So
it comes back to understanding like your buyer personas. Like Mark and I, we were only talking about this before, wasn't it? About your pros and your cons to people you should be attracting, the people you don't want to be attracting to your business. So when you set up M&P, like what cast your mind back to 25 years.
That's a long time ago.
Like when you first opened up, obviously I know things have moved on. We're almost coming up to 3 decades of it, but like what was that? What was estate agency like then to you? As in, like, did you open up? Did you get a premises? Did you go like, right, we're going to open up on this day?
And also, what did you think it was going to be like, as opposed to like what it actually ended up being like? Because I'm guessing that you probably, from what you've said so far, maybe thought this is going to be pretty easy touch. Like these guys ain't doing anything.
25 years later.
I often, like going back 25 years ago, I mean, to give you an example, I suppose, in the local area, we've always taken on people for work experience for the local schools. And I had a young guy come into my office the other day who's going to start in July. And I always say to them, what do you think an estate agent does? And he said, put a board up, put it on Rightmove and wait for the phone to ring. And I think going back 25 years ago, I probably thought the same, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot more involved than the general public sort of realise what we do. So that's something was a big sort of shock. But I still think it was actually trying to, obviously when you're attracting business and you're attracting clients, I think for us it was a case of that we wanted to help people, whether you were moving or buying a rental property, it's basically people have their sort of desires and wants and needs, and it was trying to marry those with your own, really. So I think like moving forward 25 years is we attracted landlords at the very beginning that are still our clients today. And so what they did, I had one particular guy, he bought one property, he then ended up owning 15 properties. But he managed to do that over the years. But he didn't always buy for us. He would buy through other agents, and I never had an issue or problem with that. But he'd always ask our advice, was it a good property to buy? Was it a bad property to buy? But for me, was it a good rental property? Could he actually make money? And that would be the conversation we would have. Yeah, it's a good property, or no, it's not. So we wouldn't scuffer another agent's sort of transaction because we wanted to sell him properties. I think that is the real difference. Again, we were looking to build up those long-term relationships with people.
But in the very beginning, a lot of people have told me that they had some experience with a estate agency, and that led them to going into a estate agency because they felt like they could do a better job.
Yeah.
But then obviously, as Rob said, a long time has passed, and you've now got a very, very successful business whereby, although you're doing a valuation this evening, as you said at the beginning, like you don't really need to be involved in that sort of stuff anymore. If we think back, how did you just get it off the ground, the very basics? How did you even let anybody know that, I don't know, why don't you just give us a try? And what things did you try, or what way did you think it was going to go, whereby you had to rethink? That's not work. It doesn't work like that. I'm not going to be able to do that.
I think in the early days, I mean, obviously you didn't have the technology that we have today. So it was very much like, I've lived through the estate agency of like doing leaflets and stuff like that, which we don't do any longer. We haven't done for years. But I think, it was just about getting your brand out there, your name out there. So we'd go to like the local football club, we'd go to local, sort of community things and, sort of introduce ourselves and stuff like that.
And that sort of stuff worked quite well.
And that sort of stuff worked in those days. I suppose it obviously was a different type of networking.
Yeah.
It's like now where I work in South Ockenden, although you've got established shop owners, they've become clients as well.
Yeah.
Some will, every time you go and get your coffee or your bacon roll in the morning, ask you what's happening with the property market and and stuff like that. So I suppose in respect, it's just building up those connections. And it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I know obviously now it's, agents will say it is a lot easier because you've got Facebook ads and but even looking at Facebook ads now they're just saturated with download this guide, download that guide. And I think, obviously the consumer after a while would just become sort of bored and tired of that sort of medium, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So yours was similar, but it was actual physical social networking, if that makes sense.
So,
and gradually over the years, like that, if you want to relate it to today's world, gradually over the years, that following and friends group has grown to the point whereby like there's just now more resources.
Yeah, so I think on in the area we worked, we would look at a development and we would say we would want to make that our own development.
Right.
So we would continually leaflet it with we'd do a different leaflet once a month, and then you'd actually go and do a valuation for someone and you'd see on their fridge that they've got about 6 or 7 different leaflets pinned to the fridge, so they've kept them for whatever reason, maybe to put their shopping list on, I don't know. But I suppose that it was all about a brand awareness, really, at first.
I've got a theory on that, and I'm interested to know if you think that this makes sense with your actual experience of it. That in those early days, it is all about brand awareness. Even though there were 6 leaflets on the fridge, you were still there on the valuation, and that's what really mattered at that point in your estate agency life. You just needed food to eat, if that makes sense. Just needed something. And then gradually, as the years have progressed, perhaps it's not that the leaflets don't work, but they're no longer fulfilling what you need, which is now you're going to get called on the valuation, but you want people to understand perhaps a little bit more about your brand and what you offer and why you're more valuable than somebody else, as opposed to just turning up on any valuation because you need to go out on a vow.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think that that's fair, that the methods that you're using now haven't changed necessarily just because of technology, but because you're looking for something different out of the communication that you're sending to people?
I think now you look at stuff like using the life cycle system, and before that it was all when we were in the papers, because we spoke earlier about the papers and not being in them. I used to write an article for the local paper. And so it would be you become the local property expert.
Yeah.
And that was what we tried to do. And it was very successful because when you went and did the valuation, people would say, you're the person who writes the article in the paper. But it wasn't about the company.
Yeah.
It was always about something happening.
Yeah, so you was ahead of your time in that regard, really.
So it was all about, and I suppose you've taken that forward, and a lot more people are now saying it's all about content, it's all about giving clients information and advice and stuff, but never talking about your business, never asking for the business, just, building up that trust. So I think doing the paper and writing the article was really good, because then we'd all of a sudden get people come into the office and ask advice about renting a property. Oh, how do I do it? What do I do? What do I need to do? Do I need loads of money? So we used to then get, book an appointment for someone to come in and actually take them through.
Yeah.
And some people would say, oh, you should be charging people for it. But obviously, what can you charge someone for something that they don't know anything about? Because are they going to pay you? The whole goal of it was to give them the information, help them to get on the property ladder for maybe renting. And then obviously I would be getting my fees because I'd either be selling them a suitable property and then renting them a property.
Yeah, it's going to come to you in some
rather
way or
than
another.
just say, well, if you want an hour of my time, it's £150, and or come on my course and I will do this for you. So I found, over the years, we built up on that basis that I think we were an agent where even now we have, if we do a viewing and we say to the client, look, even if you're buying through another agent, it doesn't matter, and you need some advice or you want a second opinion or you want to know anything about the area, just call us. Or here's my card, whoever it may be, Hannah, Victoria. If you want to know something, we're here to help you. It's not, so we look at it's the long game, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how we tend to work.
So, like, in that 25-year period, like you've initially said about the beginning part of getting undergoing, like leafleting, it's all about community, building up their connections. There's almost like that next almost level that you go to of like, okay, how do I then replicate that with employment of staff? And I only saw a Facebook post on this morning, someone said, like, I'm now at that stage where I've earned a little bit of money now. I need to try and get into, do I do technology or do a staff? So, like, what was it like trying to replicate Paul?
Extremely difficult. And I still haven't got the answer after 25 years. If I had, I'd be really...
I mean, you try to do it obviously with family.
You've tried, I mean, with family, because obviously your children, they'll have their own persona of what they are, what they want to be. But I think even with people that we've employed, it's always been really difficult to actually get someone to have the same values. And I think that has been one of my biggest struggles over 25 years, is to find someone who is actually committed to actually wanting to do the job, but wanting to do it at their ultimate best. But the goal is to help the client. And I know obviously people go to work for a living, and I always look at, I don't want anyone in my business who's just there for a paycheck at the end of the month and to do the minimal work. It's the people that want to read, want to educate, want to learn, which is the important thing. And I think that's been probably at M&P Estates over the 25. That's been one of the biggest challenges, I think. Even now, like 25 years later, the world is a big place. So we've now got two really, really good personal assistants. One works in sales, one works in lettings, and they have a completely different work culture. They really do. If their knock-off time is at 5 o'clock, they'll still be there at 5:30, 5:15, until they've finished what they've actually done. But obviously, I've had staff where they get there a minute before 9 or 9 o'clock, and they're clock off dead on 6 o'clock.
Or 5:59.
Or 5:59.
And have you? It's quite an interesting question, because I obviously, what I found interesting when we've gone for our coaching sessions is that from a leader's perspective, I feel like you have got quite a head-on control on looking at that and reviewing it from a almost more of a logical way to my business, rather than getting tied up in the emotions of this work. So, like, how have you managed to deal with those sort of staff that you might have employed and you thought, no, you're going through some change, and they're the ones that are gone, I don't get paid enough to do this, I'm just here to do my job. How did you manage those people to get into a point where you've got a couple of people now who are...
I think what we had to do is, like everything, is that even as a business owner, you want to have that status quo. You want to be able to come to work on your business, work in your business. And I really do enjoy that part. A lot of people say, oh, you should hand the reins over. But there's certain aspects, like I still want to do the odd viewing, and I still want to do some of the valuations, because I want to test things.
Fingers on the pulse.
And obviously you're learning things. Even at my age, you're still learning new things, and you want to, if I change that script, if I change that wording, if I frame it in a different way, will I get a better result? And then disseminate that to the people that work with you. So I think what I found is that we very much like, here's a course, do you want to go on it? Here's a book, would you like to read it? Would you like to discuss it? And recently, with one of my younger apprentices who've now sort of left, I gave her a book because she had really bad time management. She knew that, I knew that. So how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to get you to be a better, at your time management? So we got a book, Face the Fear and Do It Anyway. I gave it. I said to her, "What I'll do, I'll read it. I've read it before, and in a month we'll sit down and we go through it and we'll review it and we'll see how we get on." So the month passed. I read the book. I said to her, "Have you read the book?"
Not enough time.
No. When are you likely to read the book? Well, it's the same thing that I've had with many people. Well, I have a life outside work. But yes, everyone has a life. But if you really want to get on, you've got to invest in your own education, haven't you, really? And I think, so what we then tended to do is with people like that, you would just manage them out. You would bring HR in and have performance, and some people would turn around and some people wouldn't. And the people that wouldn't would actually leave on their own accord.
Would you ever have considered letting her read the book in work time?
Yeah. That's what we've always sort of said about, if you want to put time in the diary and stuff like that. I mean, I think when you're training people, you have, especially apprentices or younger people, is that you need to give them the time and you need to give them the time to reflect.
Yeah.
But also, for me, if I'm giving my time, I'd like them to actually give some of their own. Really, I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
And we've had some people that have worked for us over the years that have gone on to be like accountants. They didn't want to stay in property. But one of the young girls she came from school, she did her Saturday job, she went to college, she went to uni, she worked for us the whole way. She was probably the best employee I ever had. And she became an accountant. She said, "One day I'll be your accountant." And she is. So
Brilliant evolution there.
Yeah. Now she's teaching me stuff.
So, how do you feel like when you look at estate agency today and all the systems that you have in place, we've spoken about that already, the life cycle system and the portals over the newspapers and anything else that you can think of, like, artificial intelligence, whatever it might be. Do you think any of that has actually made any significant difference to the way that estate agency works? Or do you think that, I don't know, under it all, it's pretty much the same?
Yes, I would say, like, using life cycle, using artificial intelligence, for me, for an agent, saves you a lot of time. It makes you more productive, makes you more responsive to your clients. And overall, I think it gives the client a better experience. Okay,
because I guess, like, I don't think everyone's busy. That's a given. Like, but I don't think people are sort of sitting there many people know what they would do with their time if they didn't have to do certain things. Often you find that, like, if you take something away from somebody so that they've got more time, they initially feel a little bit lost almost. They want that thing back that they wish that they didn't have to do almost. So it's interesting because, like Rob said at the beginning, with you just always seem to find it, you always seem to able to adopt a new way of working and a new technology relatively calmly. And that's been my experience with you over the years, whereby like, I can explain something to you and you'll go, okay, we'll do it that way then. And then if it doesn't work, you'll go like, it's not really the way we do it, but I get the idea of it. Or, that seems to... Downstairs, we were talking about the life cycle. You can now... Just recently, we released the ability for your clients to be able to fill out their property information questionnaires, do their AMLs, all in that one system. And I haven't really spoke to any clients about it. It was quite a big thing for us. I spoke to you. It's just like, we'll use it. It all works. No problem. It's great. It was just like, wow. It's just like that. You're just going to switch to... just going to switch the process like that.
I think with different processes, though, I think it is time. It's like, as I was saying to you, it's that you've now got an interface that you can do all of these different things. Before, we used to do leasehold checklists, sellers checklists. We'd actually physically send it out to them. They'd have to fill it out. They'd bring it back into our office. We'd scan it. We'd upload it. Now we send it to them in a link. They fill it out, and it's already uploaded in the system.
Yeah.
Same with the AML forms. All of that stuff where we would then actually upload it somewhere else to our Google Drive or M server. We don't need to do that anymore, although we can if we wish, or people can still do it. But to me, it's really about saving time.
Yeah. I suppose, if it's a bit like someone once said to me, you have to almost imagine it backwards to see the benefits. So as an example, if you've always worked in a estate agency and you've always done it the old way, and then you look at the new way you're doing it, yeah, maybe I might do it that way, maybe I might not. If you only entered a estate agency today and did it your way, and then someone brought along the old way, you'd say, are you mental?
Yeah, definitely. But even our office, it's like we've had the conversations before about you go into an estate agency and you've got the desks, a bit like school, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all behind each other. And I must admit, we still do that. But we got rid of our window displays, and we put TVs, interactive televisions,
Nice.
into our office. And we put QR codes in it so people, it could pause and they could download, whatever they wanted to download. But then I look at my competitors and I've got 4 in the same area and they're still, as I say, 25 years, it's still the same. All right, it may have, you may have light boxes and things like that now. But we still, the way in which offices are set up, are still very much. And it's the same with like staff structures. I mean, someone said to me, how many people have you got working in your office? And I said, there's 3 of us, and there's 2 in South Africa, and there's 1 who works from home, and our sales progression team work from Mansfield.
Yeah.
So I have got a big team.
Yeah.
But they're not all in my office. And I think, agents tended to. My understanding of when I first came, you have 2 negs at the front.
Yeah.
You'll have a lister.
Yeah.
You'll have a sales progressor. You'll have a manager. And I'm thinking, with technology, and I mean, even in our company, we had a secretary, but you don't need one. So I think the technology has enabled people that are really good to be sort of multitasks.
Yeah.
Like Hannah is my youngest daughter. She's like just 20, but she does sales, she does lettings. She's always really busy. She sells, this month I think she's probably sold about 10 properties, let half a dozen properties. But in the old days, I'd have to have someone in lettings and someone in sales.
Yeah. And she'd be sitting there manually writing the property descriptions and manually doing this and manually doing that and manually chasing for the.
Yeah.
I guess it's there's nothing I can add to it. But I just as you're saying it, I was just thinking to myself that most agents, or even just generally us as people in life, but specifically estate agents, you forget the reason why something works the way it does, and you just carry on with it. Like a window display was there because there wasn't many places to advertise properties. The newspaper in the window was about it.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of a bit ridiculous to think that you're going to get much traction by having 12 properties in the window.
Yeah.
But we just do it because...
And it's also improving on something that's outdated. Like, what can we do better? Let's make A4 pieces of paper lit up, and now let's make it a PDF, and now let's make it a digital version. And you probably back me up on this. My only recollection when I was an agency was that people would knock. It got to a point where people would come in and they go, "Is that house for 150 grand? All of that house?" It's like, no, it's a flat. It's like it's a studio flat. That mansion is not 150 grand.
No.
you're the only one who's noticed. That mansion is.
And I had it was an interesting one. I just saw last year an agent who had recently set up, and they had obviously agents rivals saying to him like they're not good enough and etc. And they're not going to sell much. And he actually called one agent out that was hammering him, and he actually went down to their office. And then he said, "Funny enough, I was told by my client that I wouldn't be able to sell the house, and I managed to take it off another agent, and actually managed to find a buyer 25 grand higher than what the other agent was marketing it for. And they said it's because I didn't have a window display. And he said, "I actually just want to run down." So he walked down the high street agent windows and was going for all the windows ones. And he basically ended up at this windows, but actually was the competitor that was basically saying this. And that competitor still had the property that he had sold in the window 3 times at 3 different prices. And he said, like, that just goes to show proof of an outdated concept.
And I think I remember when Life Cycle 2, or might be Life Cycle 3, but I can remember you talking about, people were saying, well, I can't produce window cards and property details. And I can remember going into my office and said, right, we're not doing window cards anymore. We're not doing property details anymore. We just send people the link.
Yeah.
And people in my office, no, we can't do that. We've done that forever.
Yeah.
How are people going to actually see properties? Well, most people have their mobile phone and they'll look it on there.
100%.
And so we got rid of all of that.
Well, a really interesting one on this one, though, because you alluded to a little bit earlier when you said about that member of staff that the time management side to it. And what I loved about it was the fact that I'm going to read this book, you're going to read this book, and we're going to have a reflective period. Yeah. So, and like Mark alluded to earlier, your calmness to leadership change. Yeah. This is what I've always enjoyed working with you, because I've had a other end of the spectrum where I've got chaotic, frantic leaders who have not really got any control in it, don't really want to take direction because the accountability is on them. And then all of a sudden the staff are like in this, are we leading or are you leading? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this with staff. So when you do come back and say, right, I know we've done this for 20 odd years, 22 years probably, we're going to get rid of window cards, we're going to get rid of brochures, and everyone's gone, we can't do this. Like, how is that transition? Do you sit down with them and go through it?
You sort of, okay, but for me, it's like when COVID came and people got furloughed, I thought, obviously things changed. We didn't know that furlough was going to happen. I can remember sitting with my wife and just saying, I don't know what's going to happen with the estate agent, but I know one thing. We're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to do something different. We're going to have to survive what's going to happen because I didn't know what was going to happen. We're going to have to pivot our business. We're going to have to do things completely different and change things. And I suppose like things like people, I mean, when I had a secretary, she was a really nice lady, but I would put stuff on her pile and it would be, I can't do that. And she'd put it to the bottom, and I was the boss. And that was a really big... So I'd go back and actually take it out and say, I would like that now, please. Yeah. And I think with my staff, I've always asked them, not told them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between being a good manager, leader, is that you have to engage. Yeah. If you tell people to do stuff, they tend to take umbrage to it.
Right, here's a time management book. You read it. I've never read it, but I want you to read it. Yeah. And then tell me about it. But you're none the wiser about it. You're
none the wiser.
She could come back and just say, I read the book and told you a load of random stuff, but you're...
It's like having children.
Yeah. But at the moment, like, obviously the market is sort of changed again. I mean, all of a sudden it's become extremely busy.
Yeah.
And I've got, like, Victoria and Hannah saying how busy they are. And I said, right, here's a really good book. And I just got it. I've just subscribed. And it was about Eat the Frog by Brian Tracy. I said, right, here's a copy for you, here's a copy for you. I've read it, we're going to all read it, and we're going to start to implement some of this stuff. Like, what are your 3 biggest tasks that you've got to do today? And then all of the rest become insignificant, and it's like, so that's what we're working on now. But it's like, if someone says, oh, I've got an issue or a problem, or I'm really busy, is how do you help them to, I suppose, clear the clutter?
Yeah.
And I suppose that is the real difference.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you are somehow able to manage to maintain focus on the bigger goal here, rather than get caught up in the weeds of what the day-to-day problem is. I'm really busy. We need another member of staff. Actually, you're thinking, well, hold on a minute. No. Maybe there's the bigger issue here is that we're going to end up with 3 really busy members of staff that can't prioritise.
Yeah, having done the 25 years and having all of these people to negotiate as a lister, a manager, a sales progressor, it's now got to that stage where you sort of think the technology is there to communicate with your clients really effectively. Again, even in our contracts, lots of agents will just put, this is my fee, these are my terms, and that's it. And we tend to put in our contract exactly what we're going to do for you. So we'll do accompanied viewings up to offer. And if you want us to do any more viewings after that, we will make a charge. Things like, sales progression. It's not an open box.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can contact us 50 times a day. It means that we will give you a solid, proper update once a week.
Setting their expectations.
And it's
then,
really good, actually, because that's like a really good, from a customer journey we always talk about.
Yeah.
A lot of agents really struggle with that part. It's a really good point, Paul, because a lot of agents go, it's an open process. And like you said, like if you've got busy times like you're going through now, loads of sales going through, that then just turns into a load of chaotic. Like if someone's demanding and wants a call every hour on the hour for X amount of things.
Yeah, you've left yourself open for it.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me before about like the whole, we'll do the marketing for free, we'll do all of that for free. But if you mess us around, and we've done all of that, then you'll pay us back for the marketing. It's like pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Nothing to be scared of. Like you're not planning on messing us around, are you?
No. Well, that's how we just have an open-end contract on that basis that, it works both ways. We may get to a stage we don't want to work with you anymore.
Yeah.
You might not want to work with us, but obviously we get touted by quite a few agents that they know what our contract's like, but clients just shut the door.
Yeah.
Because
that's
what I've said. If I'm going to do X, Y, Z for you, there is no reason for you to find me. If I go and do, something completely different, or I don't give you an update once a week, or I don't, put your property on Rightmove and give you a premier listing and feature whatever it may be, then I deserve to be fired. And that's how we sort of tend to work.
It's setting the rules and the boundaries of.
But that's where we talk about chaos, because you could say, well, if I'm doing all this sales progression, I've got all these clients coming in and they need this and I need more staff.
Yeah.
And I think that's everyone's reaction.
Yeah.
Is I need more staff. And then you look at, like we've got the two girls in South Africa who both work from home, and they are absolutely brilliant. They were a breath of fresh air. We've had them for about just over a year. But it's a case of you then look at, right, how much time have you got left in your day or your workload? You've got an hour, right? I can then pass that task to you. And again, I send them tasks, and at the end of the day, they give me a list of everything they've done. So I know I don't have to. I think for being an owner, you tend to get to the end of the day and think, has that one done that? Have they done this? Has this been done? But this way, it's a much easier way of actually. And so, therefore, I think if you can manage the chaos, then you don't need loads and loads of staff, because it's very difficult to get loads and loads of good staff. It's very difficult, and that's what we've found. It's we've got some very good people now.
Yeah.
And I just have to help them manage their time.
Yeah, the smaller you can
more
keep that team, the more chance that they're going to be those good people.
Yeah.
Do you think it's about looking at outcomes rather than output? Like the people that are working for you in South Africa, some people would go, oh, I wouldn't like that. They're on the other side of the world. And is it a case of thinking, well, I don't really care they're on the other side of the world, and I don't really care if they're lying to me about the fact that they're sitting at their desk. As long as their output is what I wanted at the end of the day, then I'm happy.
I think that's the thing. It is all about the output. If I give them more and more, not necessarily, I mean, Amber is our property manager, and you'd appreciate this, is that she manages 250 properties.
Wow.
Provided she does that, right? She can do it however, she can do it standing on her head if she wants to.
And I was in the office last Saturday, and I saw her open an email that I sent her for Monday, and she opened it. So I emailed her, why are you working?
Yeah, exactly. But I think we have lots of remote, team, and I think it is a big thing to. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you're actually going to go and get people in South Africa. I think it's just as relevant. It's just as good a lesson to learn for your UK team as well, isn't it? That it doesn't actually matter too much if that person does want to come in a bit late because they have a better day if they walk the dog in the morning or whatever. But there's a certain amount of output that I'm looking for. I don't really care if you phone 100 people or 5 people, but if you can get through and get me 2 listings.
But I would agree, because obviously their output. When before I had a property manager, and 2 other people managing the same amount of
Yeah.
properties, and they struggled.
Yeah.
But because she hasn't got the chaos of people talking to her, I mean, we did an interesting exercise when someone makes a cup of tea in our office. We did a cost-benefit analysis of this, making a cup of tea, and it was like someone would go and make the tea. They'd then pass everyone on the way and talk to them.
Yeah.
They'd make the tea, they'd bring it back, they'd talk to everyone on the way back. And it was like, to make 1 cup of tea, we lost about an hour and 15 minutes of production if you add all of the people together. And over the course of the year, it worked out to £6,500.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
That is crazy. So have you banned tea now?
I'm the only one who drinks it.
Everyone's got their own Tassamay
But
machines on
Stanley
on their
keeps
desk.
the tea warm all day.
It's just like silly things. And if you put that into man hours, and people then say, "Oh, well, they're really busy,"
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know. And I think that's what we looked at. You could look at any task. I mean, obviously, like with the new life cycle stuff that's always coming out, is to look at it. How much time does it shave off? So for me, my time's really valuable. And if I can do, be more productive, then that either gives me time to go home early or make those extra calls or speak to other
Whatever it
clients
is.
and stuff like that. So, and I think that's the same for, like we were doing like sales memorandums and we were doing it outside of life cycle.
Mm.
I think, but why are you doing it? Because you've got to put the solicitor's details in, you've got to put the broker's details in, you've got to put a few other bits of information in. And then obviously the offer form came out where the clients have to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So again, that was really time consuming. So that person now can actually, so we pass that job over to someone else who's, and let that sales negotiator get on and do something else.
Yeah.
You know.
So people filling out offers online, and all the information is going into the system that then will populate your memorandum of sale. Yeah, it makes sense. Do you think that like that embracing that level of technology has allowed you to push the business on past perhaps a ceiling that it might have not have been able to get to if everything was still, look, we've got a good business here, what's the problem? Why do we need to change anything? Let's stick with the systems we've got.
Yeah, I mean, someone said to me the other day, well, I was talking to someone the other day, it was someone else in an estate agency who were actually looking to take VAs on. And we were talking about, obviously they were about my sort of age, and we were talking about, the old days of estate agency, which I see as, like it should belong in a museum, to be honest. But it was about how many people you needed. Now, if I look at, I can do an instruction, I can do a valuation, and you've got all the artificial intelligence, and you can create a set of property details, or an advert. And I'm saying, look, before I had a secretary to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say for my caliber of person, I would have needed 2 people in the background to be a support system to enable me to do my job. But now I can do that myself.
Yeah.
And therefore, I've saved, from a business point of view, I've saved on 2 salaries.
So for people that maybe are still working in the way that you would have worked previously, can you just give us a bit of an idea as to how the technology is helping you to do what you're saying? You're saying you can stick to doing valuing, and you would have had to have 2 people behind you previously. Yeah. How is it working now?
Well, it works because obviously you've got contracts are electronically done. The property information form, the AML checks are all done electronically. The property details are all done in the form. So before you'd sit there and you'd type everything up, and now you go into Azure, which is the AI part of life cycle, and it will take all the information you've already put in about the property and create you, a property description, a summary, and you might want to go in and edit it. Some people do. I mean, I sort of particularly might not like certain words. I don't like the word cosy, so I want to take it out, and it's done. So what it does, it enables you to save more time, so that you're able to go out and do, whether you're working on your business. I mean, at the moment, I've got more time in the office where before I'd get up early in the morning before I went to the office and I'd do things. Now I can do those things in the office.
Yeah.
Just working on like doing, sort of nurture journeys and things like that.
So I guess it's probably you didn't have to do those things before because you had two people doing them, but now you still don't have to do them, and you don't have to have the two people doing them either. So there's a cost saving and an efficiency around it, whereby you can work on more meaningful tasks, I guess.
And it's turnaround time, because a client will, when you're like, I just took a property on for an ex-estate agent who's now in recruitment, and he was saying to me, if I invite you into my house and I've got another agent coming in after you, how quickly can you get me on the market? And this was at 10:30. I said, well, if you phone me to let me know, I can get the photographer, which is the time-consuming part of it, in. But I can get all of your paperwork out to you within 10 minutes, and you can sign it and fill it out and be in 10 minutes, and you're market ready, because how we work, we create an audience for your property, even though we haven't got the pictures, and someone will start to phone that property out. So I said, basically, today.
His property information questionnaire, his ID, his AML check, his contract, and everything. He can all have back to you in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
and in theory, it could be someone that's in South Africa having that conversation with him. How crazy is that? What a crazy world!
That's what we found. It is just really time consuming.
Yeah,
to do it the old way.
And I bet, like you say, I said before, I guess that's just a better customer experience all round, really. When, from his point of view, what's the other option? That I could hand deliver the contract here. I can chase you up for 3 weeks, asking you when you're going to do it, and then we can go from there.
I remember those sort of days where you, like you said, the reception. You had your admin person, and like. And even I used to think about the efficiencies, and sometimes you get certain processes that people do for certain, and you think, why do you do that? It's like, we've always done it that way. And it was like, I used to have a valuer used to handwrite on a piece of paper the description of the property, and then he would then type it up, and then he would then give it to the receptionist who would then print it out, and then she would then type it up. And I was like, this is absolutely bonkers. I said, why don't you just type it up on a Word document and then email it to her? She's like, we've always done it this way. And it's and you think about it now, like you said, like that process now is made redundant, because the valuer would be sitting there for ages thinking, right, how do I put this into context? And like you said, it gives you it, and you go, I don't like the word cozy, I can just tweak it out. It's so efficient when you think about, when you said, like, that urgent person, when can you get my house on the market? I was just sitting there thinking, I've had those clients where not only when can you get my house on the market, it's like, when is it all going to be done? And if you can go, right, if you give me my paperwork back, I'll have a description back that you can authorise and approve within 5 minutes. It makes you look very sharp compared to, I've got to give it to someone else to write up, and they'll do it, and then I send it over, and I guess
you could argue like, oh yeah, but I don't want the clients to know it only took me 5 minutes to write a description. But the way that you've solved that is you've been very clear with them where the value lies in what you're going to bring them. It's not in conjuring up a description, it's in all of the other things that you're going to do to make sure that someone buys their house, it goes through the process, and the money goes out of their account and into the other person's, and that's where the value is.
That's it. Because that's what people want. I think people are so used to having stuff instant. The only thing I can't do is make photographs come back quicker. Although the systems we use now use artificial intelligence to do it. So before it'd be 48 hours, now it's 24 hours. But I can get everything back to you other than your photography within that, like, half an hour time. And we can make a start on, let's making the people in our database know that your property's coming on the market.
It's a very clever shift that you've done there, whereby many agents have still got to make that shift, whereby you're moving the value away from things that are starting to become sort of commoditized. Writing a property description, getting the photos, putting it on Rightmove, basically advertising it is becoming more and more of a commodity, isn't it? If you really want to, you can go to Strike, they'll do it for nothing. If you want to advertise, what you're shifting it towards is like, no, I'm actually going to sell it and get it to exchange. I've got an audience of people sitting here waiting that I can transparently show you. I'm going to speak to those people. I'm going to use my 25 years of experience. I'm going to get you through to exchange of contracts where you get the money in your bank. If that's what you're looking for, then feel free to pay me and I'll do it.
That's it.
So that I love that. Anything else you wanted to add to it, Rob?
Just really the final question we tend to ask every guest is, where do you see the future of estate agency?
Where do I see the future? I think the actual future is, I still think it's all about communication, but enhancing technology to help you communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's, obviously, there's still people in the dark ages, still, obviously, things take them a lot longer to do. But I think for me is that, you know, I want to be able to, as I was saying to you downstairs, I want to be anywhere in the world and be able to work from my iPad. I don't want to take a laptop. I want to be able to work from my phone and my tablet, and that's it. And I think that's, you know, for me, like using life cycle, I'm able to do that. And I'm able, and then the other thing we didn't touch on are the tasks. For me as a leader or a manager is, if I'm not available to do something, I can then just task that to somebody else to do it, and I can see that it's done.
Yeah.
Especially where you've got people in different continents. Like, I'd send that task to them, I could do it. It sounds like what you're saying there, the future of estate agency is more agile agency.
Yeah.
So it's not fixed in, this is my office address, I've got to find people within that radius. What it looks like is you're agile in your thinking, your learning, your technology, your approach to it, but also the people you're recruiting and your adaptation to processes as, I don't know, the future evolves into new ways the customer experiences and wants to be experiencing how you're dealt with, isn't it, really?
Definitely.
Love it.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us.
No worries. Thank
Brilliant.
you for your time.
Thank you.
for having me.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.